Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Sheffield Chrono 2 Black. This watch is available from sheffieldwatches.com for €172. This piece is a heritage reissue of the original Sheffield Chronograph made in the 1960s, made to modern day specification. The watch is available in two versions, white and black. The white version has a panda dial and this black version has a reverse panda dial respectively. Of the two versions, I think this black version is the best looking. The original Sheffield Chronograph from the 1960s was a 37mm. This heritage reissue of it, the Chrono 2 Black, is a 41mm diameter respectively. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a black cardboard watch box, and it's protected by this black cardboard sleeve. As you can see on the top of the sleeve, we have the Sheffield text logo in silver, and this is the watch box itself. One removes the lid, and inside we have a foam protective panel, and then in the base we have a foam cutout panel, and this does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. Although basic, it does suffice, and I think it's acceptable to use a basic cardboard watch box like this, bearing in mind it's a low tier price point piece at only €172. With regards to the items that come in the piece, it only comes with one item, which I'll show you. It's this leaflet, which is the owner's instruction manual and also the terms and conditions of the 12-month international warranty. So clear, concise instructions in English, and although it is basic, there are no diagrams. It details the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko Caliber VK64 Mecha Quartz. At the footer of the leaflet, we have the terms and conditions of the 12-month international warranty. We also have the contact email for warranty claims, j@sheffieldwatches.com. This is basic, and I would like to see Sheffield Watches improve upon it. For example, I would like to see a printed booklet, owner's instruction manual with clear, concise diagrams and instructions in English detailing the operation of the Seiko Caliber VK64. I'd also like to see a warranty card with the date of purchase, the reference number and the serial number of the piece, and that would activate the 12-month international warranty from the date of purchase. It would also add to the quality feel of the piece. So owner's instruction manual could also be as an alternative to a printed booklet. It could be a card with a QR code that could be scanned with an Android or iPhone to download the owner's instruction manual with clear, concise diagrams. This is basic, it does suffice, but I think there's room for improvement. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, as I've detailed, this Chrono 2 Black is a heritage reissue of the original Sheffield Chronograph produced in the 1960s. So as I've detailed, the original Sheffield Chronograph in the 1960s was 37mm diameter. This is scaled up in proportion to more contemporary proportions. So we have a 41mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 49.5mm, a thickness of 13.4mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The FKM floor rubber strap is black and it tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to the buckle and tang. Solid 316L grade stainless steel buckle and tang, and it's signed with high definition engraving of the Sheffield text logo in cursive font. Mirror polished to the top side, underside and flanks, nice heavy gauge to it, no sharp corners, doesn't have any sharp edges, and I'm pleased to see it's mirror polished on every facet rather than being brushed satin finished, because the head of the piece, the bezel and also the case are mirror polished throughout, and if this were a brushed satin finished buckle and tang, it wouldn't match the aesthetic of the mirror polished head of the piece. So it's good to see a mirror polished buckle matching the mirror polished head of the piece. We have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished baton handset and this silver mirror polished applied stick indices and these silver mirror polished applied Arabic numerals at 12 and 6. So this is powered by the Seiko Caliber VK64, which is a date complication Mecha Quartz, and subjectively one could be critical because although this does have a date wheel still present beneath the bicompact style, we don't have a date window at 6 o'clock. The date wheel is still present, and of course we do have a phantom date setting position, which is a negative, but subjectively I'm not going to be critical of it because this is a faithful heritage reissue of the original bicompact style used in the 1960s on the Sheffield Chronograph. It also had white reverse panda dials, and of course we had the large silver applied 6 Arabic numeral. So in the absence of a date complication, it does have the original 6 Arabic numeral applied. I think it's good to retain the original dial layouts rather than deleting the 6 and having a date window with a date complication. But this is subjective. Some collectors prefer a bicompact chronograph to have a date complication. I like the perfect symmetry of the dial rather than it's being asymmetrical. So Dial layout is a faithful reproduction or heritage reissue of the original Sheffield Chronograph. The reverse Panda dial was produced, and also they produced a Panda version, so a white dial with black subdials. Of the two, I think this reverse Panda is the best looking. Proportion of the stick indices are similar to the original. Proportion of the Arabic numerals at 12 and 6 are also similar to the original. The original also had a large bicompact style like this with two large white subdials. The only difference is, on the original, the subdial hands were silver. On this piece, the heritage reissue of it, the Chrono 2 Black, the subdial hands are red, but I like that. They complement the red contrasting arrowhead tip to the chronograph hand. The original had a red triangle tip to the arrowhead second hand, but the actual second hand for the chronograph was silver, just had a red triangle on it. I think this is better looking because they've added C3 superluminova inside the triangle. This improves the legibility, and I think aesthetically it looks better because we have red subdial hands on the 9 and 6 subdials, and we also have the red contrasting chronograph hand. The proportions of the baton hands are very similar to the original. It really does look visually exactly the same as the 1960s version, although it's scaled up in proportion with a larger diameter dial because of course the original was 37mm. This is significantly larger, it's 41. Quality of the printing to the tachymeter scale around the circumference of the dial is excellent. The tachymeter scale, the Arabic numerals and the text is sharp, it's crisp, it's high definition, the font is nice and sharp, it's not too thick and blurry, the legibility of the tachymeter is excellent. Quality of the printing to the subdials is excellent. The Arabic numerals are sharp and crisp, high definition printing throughout. They've updated the Sheffield text logo, which I actually like. I think it looks more aesthetically pleasing in the cursive font versus the original font. Chronograph beneath the Sheffield is correctly proportioned and it adds balance to the dial, and we simply have the water resistance rating 10 ATM, which denotes 100 meters at the 6 o'clock position. I like the dial isn't over branded with unnecessary text or specification. Often low tier microbrands have a tendency, when they make heritage reissues, they print too much information on the dial, too many lines of text. But we simply have Sheffield Chronograph at 12, which is good, it's clean, and then WR 10 ATM, the water resistance rating at 6, just the right amount of information. Either side of the applied silver 6 Arabic numeral, we have Japan movements because this is powered by the Seiko Caliber VK64 Mecha Quartz, so just the right amount of information. The contrasting white tachymeter scale is clearly legible, adds interest to the dial, and visually it looks exactly the same as the original tachymeter scale used on the 1960s chronograph, so they've done a very good job. Matte finish to the black main dial, and then the subdials are also matte rather than glossy enamel finish or textured finish, and I like that it's not a sunburst dial, it's matte. The legibility is good, it's not shiny and reflective as per a glossy black enamel dial, and the subdials aren't textured, they are smooth, so the legibility, the clarity is good. Now there are some other notable differences between this and the original, which it's based upon. The original had an acrylic crystal. Now, subjectively, one could say this would look more like a vintage piece if it had a double dome sapphire crystal, because that would look more like an acrylic domed crystal used in the 1960s. But however, the benefit is this is sapphire crystal. Now, needless to say, sapphire crystal is harder and more scratch resistant than the original acrylic crystal, which was prone to being scuffed and scratched or even cracking under pressure. So this is a notable enhancement. The legibility, the clarity of it is excellent due to the AR coating. It's better than the original acrylic crystal, which was thicker, and it created distortion and a slight magnification effect. When you tilted the original Sheffield chronograph from the 1960s, it had the typical distortion and magnification due to the thickness of the acrylic, and of course it was prone to being scuffed and scratched, which reduced the legibility with daily wear and tear. So sapphire crystal is the correct choice. Flat sapphire crystal is also the correct choice rather than a boxed top hat crystal, which would add 2mm of thickness to the piece. Alternatively, a double dome sapphire crystal, which would add 1 to 1.5mm of thickness. So this is 13.4, which is acceptable, and I like that it's got a flat sapphire crystal. I like the bevel on the edge of the sapphire crystal because it catches the light and projects above the flat profile stainless steel bezel. So bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel. Head of the piece, the case, is also solid 316L grade stainless steel. This is also a notable difference between the original Sheffield chronograph from the 1960s and this Chrono 2 Black. So the original had a brass case and a brass bezel, and the brass bezel and brass case were nickel plated to give it a chromed mirror polish finish, rather like solid stainless steel. But the negative of the original was the brass case and also the brass bezel. With daily wear and tear, the nickel plating wore off and it revealed the base metal, which was brass, and it revealed it was gold. And of course, that looked dreadful. So This is a notable upgrade. Rather than using a brass case and brass bezel and then nickel plating it to look like stainless steel, this uses a solid 316L grade stainless steel bezel, solid stainless steel case, and also solid stainless steel case back. It's better because there's no nickel plating to wear off. It's not going to reveal a base metal such as brass, which is gold, and therefore one doesn't need to worry about scuffs and scratches because they can be easily polished out with mirror polished stainless steel. The quality of the finishing is stellar. Mirror polishing to the flat profile bezel is absolutely flawless. In between the lugs is mirror polished to the same standard as the top of the lugs and the flanks. Now, one could argue subjectively this would look better if it were brush satin finished on the bezel, brush satin finished on the flanks of the case and the tops of the lugs in between the lugs to match the case back. But I think it looks correct with mirror polishing on the bezel and the case, and just having concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the centre section of the case back as per the original, because the original did have this shiny finish to it. It was nickel plated throughout. The bezel was nickel plated in between the lugs, the top of the lugs and the flanks. So this is a heritage reissue of the 1960s version of the Sheffield Chronograph. Visually it looks exactly the same. Of course it's a larger diameter version, it's 41 versus the original 37, but aesthetically the mirror polishing looks very similar to the nickel-plated brass case used in the 1960s. Another notable update is the pushers and the crown. So we've got a screw-down crown, which provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 metres, which is a strong specification for a chronograph. Strictly speaking, a chronograph only needs 50 metres and a push-pull crown. But the original pushers were made from brass, which was nickel-plated. And again, the problem was with daily wear and tear, the nickel plating wore off and revealed the base metal. The original crown was also made from brass and it was nickel plated silver, and of course it used to wear off and then reveal it was gold beneath. So this is the benefit of upgrading to stainless steel pushers and a stainless steel crown. It doesn't have any plating whatsoever. It's not going to wear off with daily wear and tear. Now, usually I'd be critical of a sterile crown at this price point in the low tier, €172. But on this occasion, I'm not going to be critical because the original 1960s chronograph also had a sterile crown because it was brass and nickel plated. And of course, you cannot engrave a brass nickel plated crown because if you engrave the nickel plating, it would reveal the base metal beneath it in gold, which is brass. So the original was sterile. This is sterile, but of course, the proportions are similar. And I think they've made the correct decision by not signing it because it would be difficult to engrave Sheffield, the text logo in cursive font, because it's not very large diameter. They could, of course, engrave an S for Sheffield, but I think having it sterile is not detrimental. So let's test the screw down crown execution and let's test the two pushers with the chronograph complication. So coin edge finished, nice large chamfer which deletes the sharp tips to the coin edge teeth, mirror polished cap to it which is finished to perfection. Silky smooth. This is sublime screw down crown execution. Perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown chip. It's refined. It's excellent machining, tolerances and quality control. Now, the negative of this being a Seiko VK64 mecha quartz is that there is a date complication, as I've detailed. The date wheel is still present beneath the dial. Normally, with a VK64 bicompact style layout, the date complication would be at 6. There would be a date window at 6. This does not have it because we have the applied 6 Arabic numeral as per the original. I'm not going to be critical of it, but the negative is when you pull it out to the first click position, it is now the quick set date complication position. So when you rotate the crown clockwise, that makes the date click over with a quick set complication, and you can feel the clicks of the date wheel clicking over, and you can also hear it. It's audible. That's something to note if you prefer pieces without a phantom date setting position. This does have it. It does have the date wheel, and you can feel it clicking over and hear it clicking over. Something to note. Pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movement, and if you look at the subdial, you can see the subdial red contrasting hand has now stopped dead, so therefore it's possible to set the time precisely to the second. We're now in the time setting position. Nice light resistance to it because it's 0 joules, no friction in the gearing whatsoever, very light, and it feels smooth clockwise and anti-clockwise, doesn't feel stiff, doesn't feel rough or gritty to set the time. Proportions of the baton hands are correct. The original baton hands had straight ends on them. These ones are more like sword hands because they have pointed tips, but they are baton and they're faceted rather than just being flat baton hands. The original hands were flatter. These are faceted more like sword hands due to the pointed tips, but they are baton shape as per the original. The hour hand is long enough to extend all the way to the applied stick indices, and the baton minutes hand with a pointed tip extends all the way to the white minute ticks on the chapter ring inside the white tachymeter scale. So proportions of the handset are correct, they're wide enough and long enough. Chronograph hand extends all the way to the tachymeter with the red triangle, so that's correct. So it feels good to set the time, minimal back play in the gearing. We don't have to take up a lot of slack, so that's good. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement, and the seconds begin to tick around the subdial once again. So let's test screwing it back down. Instant thread pickup. There's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. This is silky smooth. It's one of the best screw down crowns I've experienced on a low tier chronograph piece at this price point, €172. So to clarify, low tier is €0 to €500, €172. This is silky smooth. It's very refined. Sheffield have done a very good job of it. The tolerances are good. It feels silky smooth. It's not rough or gritty. So excellent. Works very well. Hacking works well. Time setting works well. Let's check the chronograph complication. Top pusher activates the chronograph, and you can see the contrasting red chronograph hand with arrowhead tip or triangle tip begins to sweep around the tachymeter scale, and it sweeps nice and smoothly. That's something I like about the Seiko Caliber VK64 Mecha Quartz. The chronograph hand doesn't stutter or judder. It doesn't tick around the tachymeter scale. It's got a nice smooth sweep to it, so it looks good. Pushing the top pusher is heavily sprung loaded. Feels crisp. Feels nice and sharp. Have to give it a good hard push, but it feels heavily sprung loaded, and I like that because it means it's reliable and robust. Long-term durability is not going to be concerned. Pushing the lower pusher will reset the chronograph back to the 12 o'clock or 60 on the tachymeter. So bang on the centre. Alignment is correct. Quality control is correct. I'm just going to check it 2 more times, because when I check a chronograph complication, I like to check the alignment 3 out of 3 times with the chronograph resetting from various positions on the tachymeter, just to confirm the alignment is correct 3 out of 3 times. So I'm stopping it again. Nice crisp action. You've got to push the pushers hard, but I like the click and I like the feeling of it. It feels solid, heavily sprung loaded, and it's good. Pressing the lower pusher resets, and again, nice crisp feeling. Bang on the centre of the 12 Arabic numerals and the 60 on the tachymeter. I'll just check it one more time. So it works very well. Top pusher feels heavily sprung loaded. Lower pusher feels heavily sprung loaded. The machining, the tolerances, the build quality, quality control are refined. It feels reliable and robust. It's a characteristic I really like about the VK64 Mecha Quartz. The pushers always feel crisp. They are heavily sprung loaded. They feel solid and reliable. They feel very good. Nice positive click. Nice positive click to reset. 3 out of 3 times, bang on the 60, bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock applied Arabic numerals, and bang on the centre of the 60 on the tachymeter. This is excellent. 3 out of 3 times, perfect alignment. Quality control of this piece is good. Right, so let's look at the FKM floor rubber strap in detail. So, FKM floor rubber is a compromise in between silicon rubber, which is softer but not as durable, and natural rubber, or NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber. So to clarify, nitrile butadiene rubber is very tough. It's very robust. It's very chemical resistant, acid resistant, and UV resistant. So nitrile butadiene, or NBR rubber, is used in the aeronautical and automotive industries because of its chemical resistance, UV resistance, and also acid resistance. It's particularly suitable. It's also very robust for watch straps because of its resistance to chemicals, acid, and UV light. The negative of NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber, is that it's stiff. It's very durable, it's very robust, but it's a lot stiffer than silicon rubber. Now, silicon rubber is very soft and supple, so it doesn't require any breaking in. That's the benefit. The negative of silicon rubber is it's not as durable because it's softer, and it has a tendency to split and crack around spring bars due to daily wear and tear. So although it's soft and supple and comfortable, the problem with silicon rubber is long term. The durability is not good. Natural rubber is also stiff and also very durable. That's equal to NBR, nitrile butadiene. In between the two, in between NBR or nitrile butadiene and silicon rubber, we have FKM floor rubber. So it's really a compromise between the two. It's more soft and supple than natural rubber, and it's more soft and supple than NBR nitrile butadiene rubber, which is good. So that enhances the comfort level and feel good factor. It's also more durable and robust than silicon rubber. It's harder. So it's the perfect compromise. FKM floor rubber is in between the two, NBR and silicon respectively. I like it. Visually, there's no discernible difference. This does look like a nitrile butadiene rubber strap, or alternatively a natural rubber strap in black. But it does look smoother than a silicone rubber strap. Often silicone rubber straps have a textured finish. This looks smoother, more like natural rubber or NBR. And it's smooth on the top side, smooth on the underside. I like its profile rather than just being flat. Also, I like that it's profiled in the thickness. So it's thicker at the spring bar end where it needs to be more robust and reinforced, because around the spring bar is an area where rubber straps have a tendency to split and crack with daily wear and tear. That's good. And then it tapers down in thickness from the spring bar end down to the buckle and tang. So it's more soft and supple and flexible at the buckle and tang end. So it's good that it's not just straight and parallel. And it also tapers down in width from 20mm down to the buckle and tang. Looks good, feels good. So let's look at the underside. Two keepers, correctly proportioned, and they both slide. The first one isn't fixed, so they float. That's good. Underside is good because we've got this recess or scallop that allows for some air circulation, and it's perfectly smooth. And on the other side we have plenty of holes, so this will fit from a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 8-inch wrist size. Plenty of holes. Also, correct decision here because we've got quick release stainless steel spring bars versus standard stainless steel spring bars. That negates the need for a spring bar tool if you want to exchange the strap. Also, what I like about this piece is we have pierced lugs, so there are holes drilled in the flanks. Benefit of this is, if you're exchanging this strap for a strap with standard spring bars, it can be difficult to depress the edge of the strap. If it's a thick strap like this, it can be difficult to compress the rubber and also compress the spring bar. And there's a risk with mirror polished cases like this that you'll slip with a spring bar tool and scuff and scratch the cases, the mirror polished lugs. But by having quick release spring bars, we don't have that problem. Also, if you are fitting a strap without quick release spring bars, you can simply depress the spring bar externally through the pierced lugs, which is good. There's no risk of slipping off the spring bar, scuffing and scratching the mirror polished tips of the lugs. So it's very well thought through. Pierced lugs plus quick release spring bars. Also, the pierced lugs with the holes in the flanks give it a vintage aesthetic, which is good because this is a heritage reissue of the original 1960s chronograph. Case back is solid 316L grade stainless steel. So to clarify, the original Sheffield Chronograph from the 1960s also had a solid stainless steel case back. The head of the piece and the bezel were made from solid brass, which was nickel plated, but the case back was the only area of the watch that was solid stainless steel. And of course they didn't make it from brass and then nickel plate it because the case back is constantly in contact with the wrist, and with daily wear and tear rubbing against the friction of the wrist, the nickel plating would wear off and reveal the base metal brass. And of course some collectors are allergic to nickel and therefore it would be irritant. So they used a stainless steel case back on the original. This also uses a solid 316L grade stainless steel case back. Centre section is concentric CNC lathe tool machined, which refracts the light, and the circumference is mirror polished. Milled slots are deburred and chamfered, so no sharp edges to the milled slots. The engraving around the circumference is high definition and crisp. A nice attention to detail because we have the twin checkered flags and chronograph 2, as well as the reference number, serial number of the piece, and the specification. And one thing I like about Sheffield is they've been honest about the origin of the watch. It says Japan movement and then it says beneath it cased in China. So they're not trying to hide the origin of the watch being made in China using a Japanese made caliber, the Seiko caliber VK64 Mecha Quartz. They've been honest about the movement being made in Japan, but the watch itself is made in China. The movement is cased in China. And I think that's fair enough to be honest about it. It's not a negative. They deserve respect, they deserve credit for being open about it being a Chinese-made piece, not trying to be a microbrand disguising it and saying it's assembled in America, for example, which it's not. So quality of the engraving is sharp and crisp, but doesn't feel rough, it feels smooth. Benefit of this case back is it's flat, it's not a deep bubble back case back. The centre section, which is concentric CNC lathe tool machined, looks good, but also feels good. It feels nice and smooth, and it's low profile. This piece is 13.4, which is acceptable. So very well executed case back, no sharp edges to it whatsoever. Mirror polishing around the circumference is good, and the concentric CNC lathe tool machining is also very good. The underside to the head of the piece is mirror polished to the same flawless standard as the flanks and the top of the lugs, and the undercuts to the flanks have been deburred and chamfered very well. We've also got bevels machined on the tips of the four corners, and that deletes the sharp corners to the tips of the lugs. It's a very well finished head of the piece. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shots and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, on a positive note, I'm pleased to report that this strap is a pleasant surprise because it is long enough to fit my 8-inch wrist. Often with rubber straps, you'll know this from my previous reviews, they are slightly too short for my 8-inch wrist, but you can see I can engage the end of the FKM floor rubber strap through both of the keepers, which is excellent. So this will fit a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 8-inch wrist size respectively. Plenty of holes for a 6 to 8-inch wrist, and as you can see, easily fits my 8-inch wrist. It's long enough for very large wrists. So this is excellent. And of course, at 41mm, it's clearly intended for collectors with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches. One thing I will say, it does dominate the wrist. It does have wrist presence. So I would say if you have a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you may find the 41mm diameter to have too much wrist presence. It dominates the wrist too much. This is clearly intended for collectors with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inch plus wrist size. The other thing to note is it does have a relatively long lug to lug measurement. So you'll know from my previous reviews, 48mm is the sweet spot. That is the perfect lug to lug measurement, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. At 49.5, this is 1.5mm longer than the perfect sweet spot of 48. So 49.5 is a long case. Not a problem if you have a larger 7 to 8 inch plus wrist size. You will enjoy the wrist presence and also the long curved lugs with the curvature to the undercuts. But however, if you have a smaller 6 to 7 inch wrist, you may find there's an overhang on the lugs, and also there's a gap beneath the F-Chem floor rubber strap due to the length of the case. I think they could have refined this and made it the perfect 48 sweet spots, because that would fit all wrist sizes, 6 to 7 and 7 to 8 inch wrists respectively. At 49.5, I would say if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you're going to find the lugs slightly too long. But however, on my large 8 inch wrist, I enjoy the 41mm diameter, and I also enjoy the long lugs, because for me it's not a problem at 49.5. 20mm lug width is correct. So to clarify, the original was a 37mm, which would be considered small by today's standards, but in the 1960s, 37mm was a popular size for chronographs. The original had an 18mm lug width. So what we're looking at here is a correct decision, scaling up the proportions. So the original was 37 with an 18mm lug width. Now, needless to say, if this had an 18mm lug width and 18mm F-Chem floor rubber strap, the strap would look too slender. But 20 is correct for a 41mm head of the piece, and the taper is correct, 20 tapering down to the buckle and tang. Buckle and tang also looks correct. So proportions are good. The lug to lug is long at 49.5, but 20mm lug width looks right. 41mm does give wrist presence. The thing I like about it is the lack of heft. This is 90 grams, and I would expect it to be circa 100 with a 41mm head of the piece. It does add some heft to it, but they've made the correct decision by using a flat sapphire crystal versus a box top hat crystal or double dome sapphire crystal, because as I've detailed, a box top hat crystal would add 2mm of thickness, a double dome sapphire crystal would add 1 to 1.5mm thickness. It would make it too tall. The flanks of the case are not slab-sided, they don't look too tall. Bezel does look deep, and that does add some thickness, but I like the way the flat sapphire crystal has a bevel on the edge of it which catches the light, so it does look visually very similar to the original 1960s chronograph, but just scaled up from 37 to 41. The thing to note is it is slightly thick. And I say slightly because you'll know from my previous reviews, 13mm and below is the sweet spot for a piece to easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. This is 13.4, so it's just marginally above the sweet spot by 0.4mm. It's acceptable. It will still easily slip underneath a shirt cuff because it's only 0.4mm thicker than the sweet spot of 13, but that's something to note. And it does look and feel slightly thick. So I think for a large wrist, 7 to 8 inches, 13.4 is okay. But for a smaller wrist, 6 to 7 inches, you're going to find it slightly too long and slightly too thick with too much wrist presence at 41. It's a shame they didn't make this in 39, because I think this visually would look very aesthetically pleasing in 39 with a 20mm lug width and the perfect 48 lug to lug, and they could have reduced the thickness to 13 or below. Because I think this is really only suitable for 7 to 8 inch wrists. 41 is large, but of course it does have a contemporary aesthetic. 41 is now a popular size for chronographs. In the 1960s it was 37. So really it's like a scaled up version, and I think they've done a good job of it, because proportions of the bicompact style, the stick indices, the Arabic numerals and also the handset have all been scaled up to match the increase in the case size. Feel good factor is good, lack of heft is good. 90 grams is comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. So it doesn't feel top heavy on the F-Chem floor rubber strap, it feels balanced. The weight is well distributed across the 20mm strap, and the strap feels soft and supple. It is stiffer than a silicone rubber strap as I've detailed, but it is as soft and supple as a nitrile butadiene rubber or natural rubber strap, and I like like FKM floor rubber because it's very durable and very smooth and aesthetically pleasing. Right, so let's do a lume test and we'll see how the lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, we simply have C3 superlume nova on the baton hand and C3 superlume nova on the triangle tip to the contrasting chronograph hand. Now, I'm not going to be critical of this because we don't have any lume on the stick indices which are applied, or the silver Arabic numerals at 12 and 6 which are also applied. The reason why I'm not going to be critical is because the original used tritium on the hands and also the chronograph hand, but the stick indices on the original 1960s chronograph did not have any tritium on the stick indices. They were simply mirror polished in silver. So this is true to the original, and this will particularly appeal to purist Sheffield collectors. For example, collectors that own the original 1960s chronograph in 37mm and they want a heritage reissue of it. So camera's struggling to autofocus, and I'm not going to be critical of the baton hands because one has to be magnanimous. Baton hands are more slender than Mercedes hands or snowflake hands used on dive pieces, for example, and they don't allow for a large area or a large plot of 5 to 6 layers of C3 superlume nova to be applied. The problem is with baton hands, they are very slender in width, in thickness, and also in length. So they don't allow for a large plot. Now, needless to say, the triangle tip of the chronograph second hand, which contrasts in red, that doesn't have a large area, as you can see. The triangle is small. The baton hands also do not have a very large area, a large plot for the C3 to be applied. They've done the best they can with the area available. I think it's fair enough. So we're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers, but it's really, the performance is negligible due to the area rather than the layers. So if it had Mercedes hands or snowflake hands, it's a given that it would have better performance. But with baton hands, you really cannot get much performance out of it because the problem is the area. So initially the exciter looks potent and it holds charge for a good length of time. The C3 matches. So the point is, in daylight, the hands match. The chronograph triangle and also the baton hands match, but the camera's struggling to autofocus just simply due to how slender the hands are, and also the baton hands just don't have a large area of lume applied. The triangle in the chronograph tip only has a very small area. So works okay. Now, reading the time in the dark is okay. There is room for improvement. They could of course apply more layers, and of course they could upgrade it to BGW9 or X1 for more potency, but aesthetically, C3 does give a green tone. It does look similar to the tritium used in the 1960s. So works okay. One has to bear in mind this is a chronograph piece. We're not looking at a dive piece. So I think it's acceptable, although there is room for improvement. Now, they could subjectively add C3 superlume nova to the stick indices. That would improve it. But of course, we would have absent indices because of the bicompact style. So for example, at the 9 and 6 we can't have stick indices because the bicompact style would obscure them. Also at 12 and 6 we cannot have stick indices because of the 12 and 6 applied silver Arabic numerals as per the original. So if they deleted the Arabic numerals and applied stick indices, that would solve that problem, but we'd still have the problem at the bicompact styles with 9 and 6 obscuring the stick indices. So I think they've made the correct decision by keeping the dial bicompacts original to the reverse Panda. We have the same silver applied 12 and same silver applied 6, and we don't have any indices at the 9 and 3 o'clock position either side of the bicompact subdials. It's a faithful heritage reissue. The dial looks exactly the same as the original, and the original didn't have any tritium on the stick indices. So I think it's fair enough. Subjectively, some collectors would argue they could have updated it and fully lumed the dial, but I think that it looks true to the original and I like it, and it will appeal to purist Sheffield collectors. So let's discuss the movement used because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. You'll all be familiar with a Seiko caliber VK64 Mecha Quartz, which is made in Japan. It's been in service since 2018, so at this stage in 2025 it's reliable, well-proven workhorse Mecha Quartz. 0 joules, has hacking, which works well, as I've demonstrated, and it has a quick set date complication. The negative of this being a date complication, VK64 Mecha Quartz, is there is no date window or date complication at 6, but the date wheel is present beneath the dial, as I've detailed. So the negative is when you pull out the crown to the first click position, there is a phantom date setting position. That's something to be mindful of if you prefer pieces without a phantom date setting position, as I do. But that's the only real negative to it. It has a 3-year battery life. Now, to clarify, The 3-year battery life is based upon you using the chronograph complication for 60 minutes per day, but in reality you're not going to be using the chronograph for anything like 60 minutes per day. So, although it has a stated battery life of 3 years, in reality it's nothing unusual for a VK64 battery life to be 4 or 5 years plus, because collectors don't use the chronograph for 60 minutes per day, and therefore that extends the battery life from 3 years to 4 years to 5 years plus. So potentially you could purchase this piece, and if you don't use the chronograph complication for 60 minutes per day, you could wear it every day for 5 years before needing to change the battery. That's the benefit. Long battery life. It's excellent. Alignment is perfect on the chronograph, as I've demonstrated 3 out of 3 times. Bang on the 60 on the tachymeter. Hacking works well. Setting the time works well. No negatives to it whatsoever. Above all else, I like the accuracy of it. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month. Just think about that for a second. That's not plus or minus 20 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month. Better than plus or minus 1 second per day. It is incredibly accurate. So it's accurate, it's reliable, it's well proven, and it has a 5-year battery life in reality, although the stated battery life is 3. No negatives to it whatsoever, other than the date complication is absent and we have the phantom date setting position. That's it. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So low tier piece, price point is €172 for both the white version and the black version, the Panda and the reverse Panda you're looking at respectively. I'm going to declare the quality as good, and I'm going to declare the value as good. Now, I'm not going to say excellent quality and excellent value, for the simple reason this does face some stiff competition from other low-tier microbands at the €172 price point. Quality of the finishing is excellent, specification is strong. Screw-down crown, 100 metres, screw-down case back. There is room for improvement with regards to the C3 Super Lume Nova, but one has to be magnanimous because it does use baton hands, and we do have a small triangle tip to the chronograph, so one has to be realistic. But specification is good, finishing is good, build quality, quality control is excellent throughout, but price point needs to be slightly lower. I'd like to see this retailed for €150 or below. That would increase the value proposition of it because it does face stiff competition at €172. There are many microbands using the Seiko caliber VK64 Mecha Quartz at this price point. But finishing is good. In terms of aesthetically, they've done a very good job. It's difficult for microbands to get the balance correct. When they do a heritage reissue of a vintage 1960s piece and increase the proportions from 37 up to 41, for example, it's difficult to retain the aesthetics. They've got it right because the case is stainless steel, the bezel is stainless steel versus being nickel-plated brass. Pushers and the crown are also upgraded to stainless steel. And also, we've got AR coating on the underside of the sapphire crystal. The original was acrylic. So the specification is 2025, which is correct. But vintage aesthetics, it does look exactly the same as the 1960s chronograph, but in a larger version. I think they've got the balance right between vintage aesthetic and modern day specification. They deserve credit for doing a good job. Also, the FChem floor rubber strap is a modern day enhancement, which is excellent. So, I'm going to declare it good quality and good value at €172. I hope you enjoyed my review of the Sheffield Chrono 2 Black. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.